Hi everybody, it's Elizabeth from Elpis Astrology at elpisastrology.com. Thanks for joining me today. So this is going to be an extended video on Mars in Aries, both going direct as well as mainly the retrograde period. So I'll divide up this video and I'll do all the timestamps as usual for it, talking a little bit about Mars in Aries, what it means, that type of thing, and kind of put some context around Mars energy, as well as the whole overlay of the sign of Aries. And then I'll go through some of the important dates that will basically be from September right the way through to January 2021 for Mars. That is significant. I'll touch a little bit on Asia and how Mars retrograde is playing into a lot of Asia. And then I'll finish off with my usual ascendants or sun signs if you want to read them that way at the end, and I'll timestamp each of those ascendants as well so that you can go directly to them if you want to, or go back to them and review it again. Okay, so let's start off with Mars and Mars in Aries. So Mars basically in Aries is talking about, or especially Aries itself, is all about I am. So it's all about me, as opposed to, it's been many times described as how a baby behaves, right? Because their whole world is, certainly to begin with, centers around them. So you could think of it in that context as well. Mars does rule Aries, but as an ancient ruler, it did also rule Scorpio too. And it's associated with the first house. And that's kind of important because the first house, certainly in Western astrology, is where we really start the whole year off. It is the zero Aries point that we use as the starting of the astrological year. And so this is an important sign when we look at the first sign of Aries, just from that standpoint alone. But it's also, Aries in the first house is important because there's a cardinal house. And so then we look at the cardinal signs, and the cardinal signs are going to be affected by this Mars in Aries. And they'll be affected by Mars in Aries in some respects adversely. And if we look at things like, say Capricorn as well as Cancer, that is a cardinal sign, this Mars retrograde, or Mars going direct in Aries, will actually be forming a square. Now when we look at Libra, the other sign, we're then looking at the opposite sign, so opposing forces. So this, and cardinal signs are really indicative of movement forward. They're seen as leaders. So that type of thing, thinking around this, is also important to remember. Now, Mars, basically just as energy, likes to get things done. It's also referred to as the fight or flight syndrome, and when especially when challenged. In mythology, Mars was accompanied by Phobos and Deimos, and this translates into fear and panic. So those can also be associated with this Mars and why Mars energy wants to move quickly, perhaps to get out of a difficult situation. It's interesting that Phobos and Deimos are now the names for Mars's moons in the Zodiac. So if we look at a Mars type, it's an individualist who's not compromising, and it wants to pursue its own path. It can be headstrong as well. I mentioned that this is a sort of leadership area. It's independent. There's great strength, and on its positive side, courage. On the negative side, it can be aggressive, or very aggressive energy. And then you've got this egotism coming in along with aggressiveness, which may also be accompanied by anger. So when we look at the Mars retrograde, this is anger being held inside. Okay, just generally speaking. but instead we may actually need strength and courage. So these are all things that we can develop and tap into. It just depends where we're at individually. Okay. The other thing is that Mars rules the head, and then of course accompanying that would be things like fevers and that type of thing. It also rules the body and muscles to some extent as well. And this is why the military is very much associated with Mars, as well as Aries itself. But certainly on the negative side, especially during the Mars retrograde, we could be more prone to accidents and perhaps operations, that type of thing. But irritation may be bubbling up on a regular basis. Okay. So when I looked at all that, I thought this could actually also be referring to this whole COVID thing. Because we've got this infection, fevers and inflammation and irritation associated with Mars in terms of its energy, and especially with it going negative or reverse, it could be viewed as the negative side of it. So it may be that we're going to be having a rash of more, COVID type cases happening right the way through the end of the year. I hope not. All right, so when we look at the actual retrograde period, Mars in Aries will go retrograde at 28 degrees, 8 minutes of Aries, and that's going to be on the 9th of September 2020. Mars will go direct at 15 degrees of Aries, and that's on the 14th of November 2020. But Mars does not completely leave Aries until about the 7th of Jan 2021. And for those that like the history buffs, the last time Mars retrograde was completely in Aries was back in 1988. And of course 1988 was a fairly large transitional year for various governments. It was also when George H. Bush was put in front of the Conservative Party as the forerunner. All right, let's go into now different dates. So we start off at the 10th of September, which is just after Mars turns retrograde, and we have the moon in Gemini passing over the north nodes of the moon in Gemini. So remember, the north nodes of the moon represent our destiny, and these destinies that we go through individually and collectively last for about a year and a half, and are punctuated by the eclipses, also in the same signs as the nodes. And of course that would be Gemini as the north node and Sagittarius as the south nodes. So this is really, I believe, a time when the public, right, represented by the moon, realizes its destiny, like really realizes it. And we talk more about it, right? Gemini is about talking, thinking, spreading the word, that type of thing. Now, on the 10th of September, we have a couple of things happening too. So we have a Mars retrograde squaring Saturn at 25 degrees of Aries. But it also trines Venus as well. And of course, that's a very placating, beneficial energy, especially as it applies to relationships. So it's an interesting mix with that. But I would say that this Mars retrograde squaring Saturn really asks us to proceed slowly and carefully. It can be a discouraging time, and I think that this could actually be a time of, and I mentioned this in my other videos, of a real time of planning, discussing, maybe even debating. But certainly this will be a time when we have to put the work in, and we want to put the energy into working this through, whatever it is that we're doing. But that we actually have to go about it in a careful way. You know, Mars, even if it's square, wants to get ahead, wants to do things, want to make it happen, action. And so this is going to be a time when we're going to be asked to contain that wonderful energy to produce good results for all of mankind as it applies to our destiny forward. We also have the Sun trining Jupiter. the Sun at 17 degrees of Virgo trining Jupiter, which is at 22 degrees of Capricorn. That's a nice little energy of, I would say that's cooperation. So we kind of start off this Mars retrograde with, you know, everyone at the starting gate wanting to make things happen and change things. And we have this little beneficial energy here too that helps promote more peaceful, I suppose, egalitarian types of views and opinions. All right, we also have the Sun that will be opposing a Neptune retrograde as well. So this could be some confusion. On top of the positive energy, there could be some confusion, but it also could be where we start really feeling inspired to do, to really reach beyond where we've reached so far. And we may hear people speaking about this type of thing. We have Mercury in Libra will be opposite Chiron as well. So again, this is actually speaking of as healing. Now, for sure, we could be speaking about healing and the progress of the vaccinations for COVID, but this could also be healing us, especially in the USA as a nation, for the whole Black Lives Matter, and many of the others that matter too. We have Saturn, which is retrograde, quincunxing the north nodes too. So there may be some disagreements about the direction that we should be going in. And this would be by the established institutions. Not surprising there. On the 14th of October, we have now a Mercury retrograde. That's going to be going retrograde at 11 degrees of Scorpio. It will go forward again at 25 degrees of Libra on the 3rd of November. So this Mercury retrograde in Scorpio is very much operational in the beginnings of this Mars retrograde, right? And so this will be really, again, Scorpio is a very deep, still waters run deep type sign. And so this will have us delving into some of the psychological underpinnings that need to be addressed. On the 3rd of November, we have a new moon. And this is at 23 degrees of Libra. And it is on the 16th of October. This probably will work out to be a significant new moon. Leading up to that new moon, we have Mars retrograde squaring Pluto retrograde. And that square lasts from the 8th to the 11th of October. And then Mars retrograde goes on to square Jupiter on the 18th to the 20th of October. So if I were going to pick a month where there's going to be great activity and pushing forward by individuals and groups, and maybe even energy towards solving some of these problems that we have, that it's going to be in October, and that new moon is going to be, opposite. Yeah, it's going to be opposite Mars retrograde in Aries. So this might be, some fractious energy where there may be some real uprisings and forceful opinions being given at this time. With Pluto there, that's the people in power, and it's squaring Pluto at that time. So there could be, those in power trying to put down other people's voices at this time. Now, there's a lot of things happening in this world. I'm not just talking about the USA here by any means, and or the COVID virus by any means. But this could be in many countries that these uprisings start happening, and those in power try to put that down in a very forceful way, by the way. So that's October time. Now, on the 20th of October, we have that Mercury retrograde I spoke about at 8 degrees now of Scorpio. It will be opposite Uranus at 8 degrees of Taurus. And again, this is just adding more fuel to that fire. of the people wanting to express themselves and not holding back. This is the like no bars hold type transit that we're talking about. I'd say October is going to be a very active month in various different scenarios, probably throughout the world. But the whole key here with this whole Mars and Aries is to have a new beginning, right? We're starting with the beginning sign of the Zodiac, Aries, and we're putting power and energy into it, that's Mars, and asking for a new beginning, right? So there's going to be a lot of energy put in by lots of people, and those people in power are going to try to suppress it. Doesn't mean we still won't have success. It just means that it's not going to all be just, roses. All right, so that's October. We also have a full moon. Yeah, let's not forget the full moon on the 31st of October. And that is a full moon at 8 degrees of Taurus. Okay, so that conjuncts Uranus, which is retrograde. Another explosive time, I would say, and it's a full moon, so there's going to be some kind of culmination come about here. Now, Taurus represents various things, but really it's my possessions. And so this could even apply to, a country, thinking that they deserve to possess another country, for instance. That would not surprise me at all. And there's a surprising move to take over another country. I don't know why, but I'm thinking more in the Asia area, where there's more stuff that happens in Tibet. Wouldn't it be wonderful if it was flipped, that they were free? Never know with these kind of aspects. You just never know. All right, so when we move into November, there's a few things happening in November. Mid-November, so the 15th of November, we have a new moon that's going to be in Scorpio at 23 degrees. And nicely, this sextiles both Jupiter and Pluto that are going to be in Capricorn. So to me, this is now saying that there's a new beginning here with regards to making some of those necessary changes. Now, this may have to do with money as well. So this may be more the money markets in that, because we've got Scorpio, we've got Jupiter, we've got Pluto. And then, of course, we've got the Mars, or the Mercury, rather, in Scorpio will be quincunxing Chiron. So this says there's going to be probably a lot more talks go on around this point, where, again, some of this underbelly that we have is brought up, and some new beginnings are discussed with regards to our healing. And it won't all necessarily be straightforward. There will be adjustments that have to be made on both sides, or all sides, depending what actually comes up at this Mars retrograde. Okay, the other thing we've got happening in November is we have a full moon eclipse. And that's going to be at 8 degrees of Gemini, 38 minutes on the 30th of November. So this is an eclipse. This again will be a pivotal point with regards to how we think, how we express ourselves, how we think of others, what we write about, and it's going to be an ending of some sort. I believe that this will be a time period where we really do finally make it public, put it in writing. This may be a time when some kind of charter is put together, where it's put in writing for all of us to read and see how we're going to begin to speak to each other, to think about each other, and treat each other. Remember that the North Nodes in Gemini, that's the direction we're supposed to be pointing in, right? When we look at December now, we have Mars now going direct. It'll be sextiling the North Nodes of the Moon in Gemini. We have the Sun conjuncting the North Nodes of the Moon which of course are in Sagittarius. So to me, this is that final step of letting go of things, letting go of things in the world that are no longer relevant for us, that don't help us, and instead to be given opportunities to truly develop the way we communicate with each other. And it may even be, I'm thinking this may even be new modes of communication. I can't think what those would be, but these would be new modes of communication, and maybe even just on the surface, it's a standard that we all agree to use when we're talking to each other and discussing each other, or even thinking about each other, or writing things to each other, that we actually have decorum around that, and that's put in writing so we all follow it. So days around the 11th of December, we have Mars trining the Sun in Sagittarius, and I think this is lovely. Remember, Mars is direct now in December, trining the Sun. So I think this is cooperation. This is cooperation with the world, with Sagittarius there, the Sun there. And I would say this is law, that perhaps at this time there are some laws enacted that serve mankind, right? That's what I see that as. And then that's followed up on the 14th of December. We have a new moon total eclipse, and this has got to be one of the biggest eclipses of this year as well. So this is a new moon total eclipse, and it's at 23 degrees of Sagittarius. And at this time, we have, obviously the Sun and the Moon are together at all new moons, but we also have Mercury there as well, and the south nodes of the Moon. So this is a time of a big shift with regards to literally letting go of the way we communicate and the way we think about things in the world, and instead resetting our compass so that it serves all of us in this world in a positive way. Now, obviously this translates into us individually as well. It's not just on the collective level, but I do see this Mars retrograde as being a big collective thing, and it's going to be lots of different things, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video. It's not just going to be one thing. Now, the other thing, of course, also with this total eclipse on the 14th of December is that is hovering over the galactic center. So we have that activated as well. So those who are receptive to receiving things at a higher level, this would be a good time of literal communication, because we've got Mercury there too, that's in Sagittarius, all together over this galactic center. So high level communication. I guess we could literally hear something from the galaxy as well. Maybe something astronomically will come in too. That would be very exciting. And of course, this whole total eclipse trines are now direct Mars at 20 degrees of Aries. So I see this as the positive push forward. So, let's mark that 14th. So it's mid-December, basically. And you could even extend it beyond the 14th, on either side as well. It's a powerful eclipse, no question of it. On the 21st of December, it's the winter solstice, but we also have a monumental new cycle starting too, and that would be Jupiter conjuncting Saturn at around 0 degrees, 0 to 1 degrees of Aquarius. Now it'll stay, both these planets will stay there for some time as well. Jupiter for just a year, and Saturn for over 2 years. And at that time, on the 21st of December, we have Mars direct at 22 degrees of Aries, and it'll be squaring Pluto at 23 degrees of Capricorn. So I see this as power struggles. So there's a new cycle brought in that is to serve all of us, to serve mankind. That's that whole Aquarius, right? At a high level. It's not just individuals that get treated right. Everyone's going to get treated right. But there's going to be some resistance from those, like a cronyism. That's what I see this as in power, where they're going to be button up against this. Power struggles, okay. That's what this is. This is also punctuated by a third quarter moon that will be at 0 degrees of Aries. I thought that was very interesting too. So this to me is another layer of saying this is the starting point. This is where we're going to be plowing a new path for all of mankind. And these are significant things. But we'll be doing this in our own lives as well. So make sure, as always, get your own chart out. And I'll be talking about the ascendants in a minute. But do follow your own chart with these different dates and transits and configurations that I'm giving you. See how it affects your own chart and what house it's in, which means, of course, what area of your life will be affected. Okay, so now we're getting into January 2021. I can't believe I'm saying that. And I'm sure that'll be here before we know it. Mars will be at 29 degrees of Aries on the 5th and 6th of Jan. But then it's followed by Mercury again at 29 degrees, but in Capricorn. And then we have Venus also at 29 degrees, but it'll be Sagittarius. Yeah. So all three of these personal planets are going into new signs. They're ending things at the 29 degree mark of each of their respective signs, and then new energy ushers in. So that's probably what's going to be happening. New energy, more obviously, is ushered into our lives individually and collectively. And I think this will also be marked by a new moon that will be at 23 degrees of Capricorn on the 13th of January. This basically conjuncts the square that happened between Mars and Pluto in December 2020 and October 2020. And also Pluto was at 24 degrees at that time. So this may activate again some of those power struggles or resistance. At the very least, there's going to be some resistance here from those that are holding power. And there will be big efforts, maybe even military efforts, to change what needs to be changed and to transform what needs to be transformed. But be confident that we will get there. No question of it. All right, I'm going to just touch a little bit on some of the Asian countries and some of the leaders as well. It's kind of interesting how this Mars retrograde plays into a lot of Asia, and especially I looked at, I'm just going to go through them as I put them down, but I just thought it was just really interesting that Kim Jong-un, for instance, he has his son at 17. We don't have a time of birth for him, so I can't see what houses these things are in, but we do know that his son was at 17 degrees, or is 17 degrees of Capricorn. And Jupiter conjuncted this point at the end, will conjunct this point at the end of August, because I'm making this at the beginning of July 2020, and all of September 2020. Now, Jupiter asks us to grow, but it also expands everything. And, you know, if we look at a sun in Capricorn, this is someone who, adheres to the old ways. And so he could be, the sun also represents our heart and our inner selves. So I would say the first thing I got was that he should take good care of his health, but also the health of his country as well. So not sure where that will go, but to have your Jupiter there is accentuating it. Now usually Jupiter is a very positive thing, and for sure it could be for him, but it can also highlight some maybe underlying problems with his health. Jupiter will conjunct his, he's got a Jupiter Neptune conjunction, and Jupiter will conjunct this in December 2020. So this could be some kind of deception either on his part or towards him that is, again, a big light shone on it. Either way, or both. He has his Mars actually in Libra at 28 degrees. So if we go back and remember what I said at the beginning of this video, we had Mars go retrograde at 28 degrees of Aries. Well, the opposite sign to Aries, of course, is Libra. So right kicking off this Mars retrograde, we have the Mars retrograde opposite Kim Jong-un's own Mars. So this sets up an opposition. So this could be some kind of aggressive action, either towards him or by him during this Mars retrograde, but kicked off in September. I looked at South Korea as well. Kim Jong-un is, of course, North Korea, but South Korea as well. And actually, I did a lot of looking around. I won't discuss it in this video, but you know, China is very much in South Korea in terms of literally in the land, which I was very surprised by how much they've infiltrated South Korea. But we have Jupiter that will be conjuncting South Korea's natal moon at 23 degrees of Sagittarius. I mean, the total eclipse will be conjuncting South Korea's own moon, which is at 24 degrees of Sagittarius. Now, here again, we've got Mars for South Korea is at 17 degrees of Libra. Again, we're talking about an opposition with the Mars retrograde in the universe. And on top of that, South Korea has its north nodes of the moon at 8 degrees of Taurus. So the last week of October 2020, for the second and third time, it will be conjuncting Uranus. So, you know, this is some kind of destiny for South Korea. Some kind of major upset or action, either by South Korea or towards South Korea. That will be surprising. With Uranus in that mix, it'll definitely be surprising. And it'll change their destiny. Right. Now for China. China has the north nodes of the moon at 16 degrees of Aries. And of course that's pretty close to where the Mars retrograde will go direct. It'll go direct at 15 degrees of Aries. So that's pretty darn close to China's north nodes as well. So again, this is a conjunction of the Mars retrograde as it finishes off. So there may be some kind of action taken, again, with regards to its destiny. This is China I'm talking about. And we also have China's Jupiter at 23 degrees of Capricorn. So we still have, hovering around this area, we have Pluto, right? As well as Jupiter. Jupiter for sure. So this is like increasing, you know, amping up the energy, especially of power, right? Because when we're looking at Pluto, we're looking at power. And Jupiter adding to that just increases that power. So it could be China's bid for exerting its power. And, you know, certainly it could be the military with those north nodes of the moon at 16 degrees of Aries. Perhaps this is going to be some military action, either, you know, within China or, I guess, China with other countries. Now, North Korea, we already discussed the leader Kim Jong-un, but North Korea's ascendant is at 0 degrees of Cancer. And of course, that's where we had that big eclipse at the end of June. So something may have happened at the end of June. And Uranus, by the way, natally conjuncts North Korea's ascendant as well. So that eclipse at the end of June did some kind of triggering for their future as well. And they've got their north node to the moon at 6 degrees of Taurus. Now, a lot of these countries were put together or formed officially towards the end of the Second World War. So that's why we've got kind of similar types of configurations of planets here, in case you were wondering. Yeah, so they're all kind of tied in. Their destinies are kind of tied in. What else have we got here? Okay, so we have India. Yeah, India, I just put down here, India also has its Mars now at 0 degrees of Cancer. And certainly we've heard different things that were going on there in June. So its ascendant is at 1 degree of Gemini. So you know the north nodes of the moon, or the nodes of the moon, both north and south, they go backwards. So we start at 29 degrees and go back to 1. So when these north nodes of the moon tie up, right, they will tie up towards 1 degree of Gemini. So we're looking at really probably 2022. There may be a new course setting for India as well. But something was activated that with their Mars at 0 degrees, that's some kind of action. Now again, we'll go back to that military action. India has, I believe it's the second largest foot army in the world, which I didn't know. So that eclipse can last for 6 months, sometimes longer too. So because we're talking about a country, that eclipse at the end of June may have initiated some kind of military action that is just going to continue over the next 6 months. We'll have to see. I'm not an expert on international relations. I just thought this was interesting that this came up. Let's go on to the ascendants now. So we're going to start off with Aries, because that is where the Mars retrograde is going to be occurring in. And we know that Mars rules your sign, so in many respects, having a Mars retrograde in your sign, which is ruled by it, is very beneficial. The only thing you've got to be careful of, Aries, is, generally speaking, take care with any rashness. You're going to want to recreate you during the retrograde period. So that's kind of like, September, October, and early November, where you may undergo a real transformation and maybe set out an actual plan of how you're going to transform yourself. Now, this could also be things like you decide to take up bodybuilding or some major exercise regimen that you decide to go into to change your body, because Mars also rules, in many respects, the body as well as the head. Certainly you're going to have increased energy during the time period that Mars is in the sign, whether it's retrograde or not. Retrograde period is just going to cause you to bring that energy in a little bit. So it's possible that you're trying to push forward with certain projects, whether they're related to you or other things, and you're frustrated during the actual retrograde period, September to November. But again, go back and use that energy to do some planning, Aries. But this could also see you fighting, you being one of the ones that you're fighting for your rights. It can also be a time where you express this energy through sports, but you're certainly going to be wanting to blaze your own path. The last time, as I mentioned, we had this Mars retrograde in Aries was 1988. So you could look back to that time, depending on how old you are, and see what may have come up at that time. Obviously, all the planets are kind of different right now, but it may give you some indication of what this Mars retrograde may play out to be for you. When we look at Taurus, we're really talking about your 12th house here. That's kind of a hidden house. At its highest, we're to express our spirituality. It's also supposed to be hidden enemies. So here we could have you just doing a lot of activities behind the scenes or in secret. And you might be seeking a spiritual path, or you might just be putting a lot of energy into resting or learning new ways to actually relax. And this could be through, say, meditation or yoga, that type of thing. But certainly this is going to be a more retrospective, inward type of time for you with regards to the energy, how you use your energy. And that's probably what I would see it as. It can also be, say, at the retrograde period, that secrets may come out, or as Mars goes retrograde and then goes direct, secrets could pop out, whether they're your secrets or other people's secrets, where you find things out that are important for you to know, maybe even important for you to move forward with, right? Whole Mars moving forward, where something was held from you, and once you learn what that is, you can then move forward again. For Gemini, it's your 11th house. And so you're going to be putting your energy towards friends and groups. You may be literally doing some activities with them. This could be sporting activities or traveling with them, that type of thing. But certainly this will be all revolving around your friends and groups. You might be pursuing some new hopes and wishes as well. So Mars may give you energy to literally write down some new hopes and wishes that mean more to you. Yeah. It can be a positive time too, Gemini, for you to be working with others, right? So working with others is a great way to express Mars's energy in the 11th house. Just take care around the retrograde periods not to get frustrated and to try to be diplomatic. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I can suggest to everybody is during this whole Mars period, whether it's retrograde or direct, in Aries, there's going to be a lot of boundless energy where you want to make things happen and you're going to get frustrated at different times. So try to take the diplomatic approach whenever possible. But there are times when you do have to push forward with your individual ideas. So you can always check in with people, right, if you're unsure what you need to do. For Cancer, it's your 10th house. So the 10th house can be a time with Mars there where fame could come your way, or infamy, depending on how you've been leading your life. But it can also give new career energy for you. So it may literally bring in some kind of male energy that gives you a new job. Or your job may require you to do a lot more things, right? Where energy is expended a lot more. You could find that happening in your career. Can be a time where your status increases for sure. But just take good care about not arguing at work. That would be the biggest thing, because of course in your opposite sign of Capricorn you still have Pluto there, as well as Jupiter and Saturn, depending what time period we're talking about here. Saturn doesn't go back into Aquarius and Jupiter doesn't go back in until almost the end of December. So you've got potential power struggles, Cancer, that could come in where people try to block you. But they could equally be supporting you. People in power, raise you up and increase your status at work. And if you don't work, it's what you do as an interest, what fuels you in terms of giving you meaning in life. For Leo, it's your 9th house. So this could see you, leading social reform, and there could be a foreign involvement here. It can also give you like religious self-importance, because Jupiter rules that 9th house, and Jupiter is where the South Node is. So this might be care that you need to take here, where there may be you thinking that your ideas, whether they're philosophical or religious, are the best ideas. And that may not be the truth when we apply it to everybody. And so this may be a time of travel. I know we're not traveling very much, but certainly Mars here can certainly lead you to be, for some reason, doing a lot of traveling, and that would be like international traveling as well. Can also have, depending what you're doing in terms of education, it could have you being very busy with educational type of activities as well. And maybe some frustration with the Mars part of it in retrograde, right? From September till about November, there might be a little bit of frustration. But, Mars gives you that courage to plow through things. So don't think it's all a done deal. Keep plowing through that stuff and know that there can be great reward for those who have courage to keep proceeding forward, right? So courage is a good watchword here. For Virgo, we've got your 8th house. So you're going to have sort of some strong desires, and these strong desires may be sexual desires, but it may also be a time when you really want to understand and uncover some psychological truths, and or even your psychological underpinnings of yourself. So you may put a lot of energy into this to maybe work with somebody to, reach maybe different times of great eureka type moments where you say, I get it, I know why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I just have to change this to make it better. That type of thing. So this certainly would be a great time to work with a therapist. Whether it's a physical therapist or something physical you need, more likely is going to be mental, but then as you know, a lot of sports in that have a large psychological component for the person to be geared up to win, right? Yeah, so your psychological undercurrents can be rather strong, so I guess that's just care with being too obsessive-possessive. You're going to have a lot of energy from Mars digging into your brain and maybe activating some things. So don't be obsessive or possessive at this time, but know that you're probably going to have some tendencies towards that. This may be a time too, the 8th house is, loans, credit cards, money that you share with others, your pensions, that type of thing. So it may be a time when you have to work to release some of your funds, but maybe not release others, and there may be some struggles to get that done successfully, say during the Mars retrograde, or just planning to get some money released that you can use that's beneficial for you. When we look at Libra, it's your 7th house. And so this is going to have you working with partners. And I would say, especially for you, please use tact and diplomacy at this time, because there may be some frustrations with partners where you're not agreeing on things or agreeing the way things should actually be done. And you're certainly not going to have a lot of patience at this time with others, for sure. Now, when we look at Mars retrograde, that's opposite your sign, right, Libra? So you're going to have maybe a little bit more energy with regards to frustrations, and because you've got this opposition. But work with that opposition. And maybe this is a time for you to really use and uncover what a great diplomat you can be. Could even be a time, if that is where you go into, could be a time where you develop into something like a diplomat. Kind of cool. Because the 7th house too is basically other people, right? Broadly speaking. When we look at Scorpio, it's your 6th house. So again, a little energy or a little patience would go a long way with others, but it's going to have you having increased energy with regards to the place that you work. This would be great energy for planning a project, for instance, and even executing it as it goes. Mars goes direct in November, December, January. Where you could implement these new projects or plans that you have when it goes direct. Just take good care of your health, because the 6th house can also relate to your health. It can also relate to things associated with health, which is what you eat and your exercise regimen, how you take care of yourself from a health standpoint. Now, something may come up around this time with Mars. Mars may reveal something to you. And I'm thinking especially, say, around there's a new moon in Scorpio in November. Something may come up. And this is just a time when perhaps you need to take care of something with regards to your health. And there's just a light shone on it where you can start a new beginning. It can also be a time just on the surface where you decide to put together a plan where you're going to do your exercise and you're going to change the way you eat. All with regards to having better health. For Sagittarius, it's your 5th house. And the 5th house is, that new love coming into your life. It's children, it's your own business, and it's games of chance. But it's also a time when you may really decide to put a lot of energy into expressing your authentic self. This would be an ideal time for that, Sagittarius. It can also be an ideal time to start a new partnership, a new love relationship, Could be a time when a spark happens and you become pregnant. But it can also be a time where you decide to build your own business. And you do that in the Mars, you do the planning period in the Mars retrograde, and then with the direct periods, you actually implement that plan and create your own business. Very favorable for that type of activity. Manifesting. But all in line with you expressing your authentic self. Especially from an artistic standpoint, that's what we're looking at here. Yeah. Could be a time when you actually produce some kind of artistic expression, right? Producing a piece of art that is awesome. But, you know, self-care with regards to children and their activities is important. Self-care for yourself, but also care with your children, because that's activated here too with Mars. So just, you know, don't get all worried about it, but just maybe just have an extra level of thinking with regards to, especially during the Mars retrograde period, what your children are doing, what kind of activities they're doing, and that nothing would harm them. Make sure that they're safe. Okay, so now we're on to Capricorn. And of course, Mars in Aries will be squaring your cardinal sign of Capricorn. It is in your 4th house. The 4th house is the home. So just generally speaking, there could be a lot more arguments in the home. And there could be a lot of activity going on within the home. So what does that mean? It could be that you're renovating your home, rebuilding your home, or building a home. All those things could be up for you at this time, Capricorn. With the retrograde part of it, so September till early November, we're looking at potential delays in moving forward. So, you know, there's a time to plan, and then there's a time to execute. Do the planning during the retrograde period and thinking things through, and then execute during the times on either side that Mars in Aries is direct. When we look at Aquarius, we've got your 3rd house. So this could see you, you know, having a very active mind. The 3rd house is certainly the thoughts that you think. It's also your neighbors and neighborhood. There could be literally digging up in your neighborhood at this time. So it's also like short travels, you know, just traveling in your car, say, around the neighborhood or walking around the neighborhood. So I would say, especially during the Mars retrograde period, just take care with your the driving that you do, especially short drives that you make, and any info regarding the facts. So this is going to be a time, for some reason, you may have to be collecting facts and information. So during the retrograde period, some of those facts may not be coming forward for you, or it may be difficult to get those facts dug up. But again, go back to that watchword for Aries and Mars, which is courage and determination. So use those types of things when you're trying to dig up those facts and the information that you need at this time. So we're going to end off here with Pisces. And Pisces, this is going to be in your 2nd house. So you're going to have a desire, that's Mars, to acquire goods, especially nice, beautiful goods and pieces of art. It could be a time where you review your values. And it can also be a time, negatively, where there might be some dispute over property. Now, that could literally be a property like a house, but it could be any types of property that you have, from jewelry to pieces of art, that type of thing, where for some reason you may have to figure something out with regards to some kind of dispute. It's also a time where you may review how you spend money, because the 2nd house, of course, is the money that you earn. And you may have some extra bills come in that you have to pay that might have been unexpected. So how you earn your money and how you spend it is going to be very much at the forefront of your mind during this time too. But certainly it's a good time to review values. Do you value yourself? Do other people value you? Does the job you're in value you? So these may be all questions that you start reviewing during this Mars and Aries retrograde and direct period, where you come up with some new ideas with regards to how you view yourself from a value standpoint. Okay, we're going to end there. And I think that kind of ties everything up. I will be back to give you your August 2020 video. It'll be probably a 10-minute video where I'll cover things. Now, I will, through the months, continue to cover the Mars retrograde and then the Mars going direct in Aries throughout the next few months. So this isn't just going to be on, this is the only time I'm going to talk about Mars retrograde. I will continue to talk about it in my monthly videos too. Do take care of yourself. I hope everyone's enjoying themselves during this summer. And I do hope that we get some time to socialize properly. In California, they keep closing stuff down. I'm a bit of a homebody, and I've just moved to a new house, so I'm setting up my garden and growing seeds. I guess that's also a good Mars retrograde type of activity, is putting down my roots by growing some seeds. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.